Hi, I'm Tom Bleach. I'm a journalist at the Fintech Times, and today we're with Seamless TV in Saudi Arabia, and I'm joined with Emir. Emir, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. So could you give the audience just a quick introduction into who you are, your position at the company, and tell us a bit about Tarabut Gateway and what they're aiming to do?
Sure. And first of all, Tom, thank you so much for having me.
No problem.
And it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to talk about Tarabut Gateway on today's episode.
Fantastic.
I am head of business development at Tarabut Gateway. So I'm leading all of our business engagements, our key accounts and relationship management across our Bahrain, KSA and UAE markets. Tarabut Gateway is an open banking platform that connects banks and fintechs through a single API so that they can build financial services on top of it by leveraging account information that they yield from the banks and furthermore to also initiate payments directly from accounts.
So obviously you've got a lot of experience with financial institutions across the world in the likes of New York and Bahrain. What can you tell us about differing regulations both globally, also across the GCC? The Tarabut Gateway has had to kind of deal with those kinds of challenges, regulatory challenges, and how fintech readiness is different in different regions as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. And it really differs based on the regulatory framework, how the banks and fintechs are responding to regulations or even frameworks, for that matter. We've seen in some markets like the USA, where it's not regulated, that they've been very successful with open banking payments, starting back with the first experience I had, which was using a payments application called Venmo, which was connected directly to my account for peer-to-peer transfers. Other markets, maybe in the Far East, like Singapore, are not, it's not a stipulated framework, but it is advised for all of the banks and fintechs to follow a standard set of protocols. So it's really a question of finding the balance between innovation and regulation. So sometimes regulation can inhibit innovation, sometimes lack of regulation can also cause risk on the innovation side.
Yeah, well, we've heard so much about that at Seamless. Getting that balance right is so important to enabling innovation. But keeping the subjects on innovation and regulation for a second, a bit of a more of a fun one, I suppose. If you were to draft your dream sort of regulation, what do you think should take priority?
Definitely. I think right now, especially in this region. So we're learning from a lot of, let's say, past experiences, maybe even challenges that we've seen in other markets.
Yeah.
But this region will evolve in a different way, especially with the way that banks operate here, what their KPIs are, what their core competencies are, what their strategy is going forward. So as a result of that, I personally would like to see more emphasis on user adoption. So it's great, we have a standard set of framework here. The use cases are defined in the Saudi market, for example, which is amazing because it gives the market an inclination of what they can actually come in and build new products for. That's really good for fintechs. It's beneficial for banks because it enables them to think about how they can acquire customers, retain customers, and actually increase their balance sheets by working with fintechs and building open banking solutions themselves. And of course, the most important thing being the end user. So how can they benefit the end user? How can they provide them with better credit terms? How can they include them more financially? But I think the main challenge that we're going to see is getting users to adopt it. It's a new journey. It's a very new phenomenon. While the banks and fintechs are very focused on it today and we're working together to build upon this ecosystem, it's the end users ultimately that will need to adopt this. So coming up with strategies, campaigns, even from a regulatory perspective, to educate end users about open banking and its benefits, and actually how they can use it for their own benefit.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit more about how the open banking specifically ecosystem differs between the likes of Saudi and, say, the UAE?
Definitely. So as Tarabut Gateway, we're focused on Bahrain, Saudi, and UAE. Right now we're present in the three markets. Bahrain was the pioneering market in this region. Started with Bahrain. I think the Saudi framework has taken it to, they put a lot more detail into how they want to see the regulations being formed. They've stipulated 8 use cases for AIS and 8 use cases for PIS. AIS is account information services, PIS is payment initiation services. They're also going to be including financial entities and EMIs and wallets that need to be exposing their APIs and allowing other TPPs to connect to them, or allowing customers to be able to share data from their EMI accounts. UAE has come up with a very broad scope for the open finance framework, and it's not only going to include banks that need to share their information, but it will also extend to other fintechs like money transfer operators and money exchange houses, insurance companies. So it's a very broad scope. The question will be, do you want to start that broad, or do you want to narrow the focus down first and then start broadening it out? So that's what I'm seeing in Saudi. But it's great to see the amount of thought and the amount of due diligence they've done into creating these suggested frameworks.
Yeah, well, obviously they've done so much work regulatory, as well as the Saudi Vision 2030 to really try and drive this economic growth. Where do you place their chances as becoming an internationally competitive fintech hub and financial hub?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm just going to provide a couple of figures to build on my point. So there are about 92,000 registered crowdfunding investors today in Saudi, just to give some perspective. And I heard an anecdote recently from an industry colleague of mine who said that there was a loan opportunity of quite a substantial sum for an SME opportunity, where it took 3 minutes for the deal to close. So he couldn't even invest or get a chance to invest into the opportunity because demand is there. When it comes to supply, Vision 2030, there is an objective to incubate at least 520 fintechs in Saudi. So they're bringing on international fintechs as well. They want international experiences. They want entrepreneurs locally as well. They have a lot of programs for that across, the code initiatives, the ministries, and other Vision 2030-led programs for local entrepreneurs. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this evolves over the next 5 years.
Fantastic. So obviously, there are a lot of legacy financial systems still around, and how do you think the sort of relationship between these legacy financial systems and fintechs is going to progress in the region? Are we heading towards competition or collaboration?
I think it's a bit of both. In fact, it's going to be banks and fintechs partnering with each other that are competing with other banks and fintechs that are partnering with each other. So especially in the Saudi ecosystem, you'll see a lot of banks that have their own fintech subsidiaries that they use to build technology in-house, or that they're using to refer a balance sheet, for example. And on top of that, I'm seeing the same approach that we've seen in, for example, Singapore and Hong Kong with the Nexus Ventures, where banks are starting to even launch their own venture building programs, create fintechs, and actually be the first to service those fintechs with their banking as a service facilities. And this is to prove a POC, so that they can then actually expose their services for other TPPs, other fintechs to consume, and eventually monetize, build new technologies, bring new solutions to the market.
Fantastic. And obviously we're in the place now to see at Seamless different fintech innovations and developments. What part of that area, ecosystem of fintech is exciting you the most right now?
So I think when it comes to open banking, it's definitely going to evolve over time. As of today, I'm seeing emphasis on personal financial management, which is very service-led account aggregation. So it's just the customer being able to link their account, but then the work that goes behind it, the type of products that are powering it are very powerful in terms of the categorization of the transactions, in terms of interpreting those transactions, turning them into actionable insights. But where I really see adoption, coming into the future will be around lending use cases. I divide it into 4 counterparts. So I would say that you have retail lending, retail payments, SME and corporate lending, and corporate payments. Yeah. So of course, payments is going to be, where the real large, high ticket and large volumes of payments that are being processed are going to be. And you've got 8 use cases that the regulator has required: an account information service and 8 across payment initiation services. And a lot of these use cases are very ambitious. So you've got refunds, variable recurring payments, fixed recurring payments among those 8 use cases, which we haven't even seen globally. I mean, sure, in some markets, some of the government entities have adopted it, but it's still new globally as well. So it's exciting to see the ambition that we have in this market to require that banks and fintechs go live with these type of use cases, by a certain deadline. Yeah. So that really means that they believe in the infrastructure, of the economy here.
Fantastic. So finally, to bring it back to all open banking, which fintech solution based on open banking do you think is going to see mass adoption next or first?
Yeah, I mean, first will definitely be personal financial management. That's a no-brainer, I think, just because that's how it started globally as well, and you can build on top of it. You can build a lot on top of it. So you understand your customers' habits through personal financial management. Plugins that you embed into your front-end offerings. Yeah. However, I think in terms of the value that is going to drive into the market, it's gonna be around lending solutions, being able to interpret your customers' data from the financial management, from the expense tracking and budgeting, so that you can provide them with more financial products and services that are custom tailored towards their needs. Whether that's a loan or whether that's some sort of mortgage facility, that's where I see the real value for the customer and for businesses to increase their top line as well as mitigate their bottom line.
Fantastic. Well, it seems like a very exciting time for the financial industry and the open banking sector as well. But thank you very much for joining me, Emir. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed day 2 of Seamless.
Thank you, Tom.
Brilliant. Thank you.